Students, this is chapter 6 for payroll, and what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be working on the review section of chapter 6. All right, so hopefully you guys have attempted the review section already, okay? If not, please do that and then come back to the recording. In the matching and review section, we have 22 items, okay? So the first one, the employee's earnings record matches to used to complete a W-2 form, which shows their annual wages. The pay card matches to a debit card based account. That is a card given if they don't have an account for direct deposit for payroll. Disposable earnings, those are earnings remaining after withholding for income taxes and for other amounts required by law. Regular earning plus overtime earnings. That is the debit portion of the payroll entry. And payroll taxes are the expense accounts for FICA, FUTA, and SUTA taxes on the employer. The next question, overtime premium is defined as 1/2 of the regular pay rate multiplied by the overtime hours. So they're not saying the overtime rate, they're talking about just the overtime premium, which is 1/2 of the regular pay rate. If they were just talking about, most of the time we talk about overtime as time and a half, but that 1/2 is the premium portion. Wages payable is a liability account for wages that have been earned by employees but not yet paid. Payroll register provides information needed in preparing the journal entries for payroll. The 668W form, I don't know if you remember this from the PowerPoint, but that is the form that notifies an employer of a tax levy. And a garnishment is a legal procedure by which a portion of the wages of any person is withheld for payment of a debt, such as child support, student loans, etc. Which of the following information is contained in a payroll register? All of the above. So it shows you the number of withholding allowances, total earnings, deductions from total earnings, and net pay for each employee, period covered by the payroll, the name of each employee, and the marital status. For what reason are distribution columns sometimes provided in a payroll register? To classify the wages and salaries according to the nature of the wage and salary expense. So I think what that means is instead of just having one wage and salary expense, you might have to split it between office and plant and different things like that. And that's exactly what we're going to have to do when we do the project. Okay, the use of cumulative column in the employee's earnings record is used for the total amount of accumulated wages each pay period so that the cutoff point for each employee for FICA, OA, SDI, FUTA, and SUTA can easily be determined. In Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, most workers are subject to 3 income taxes on their earnings, federal, state, and city. Should an employer in Philadelphia record the liability for withholding of all these 3 taxes in just one account? And that answer is no. Garnishment of wages refers to the legal or equitable procedure by the means of which a portion of the wages of any person must be withheld for payment of a debt. What is the order concerning wage attachments? If you go back to slide on this, the first one is bankruptcy. The second one is federal tax levies or child support orders. And the third one is creditor, student loan, or federal administrative wage garnishments. Sorry, it's slow. Okay. Under the Consumer Credit Protection Act, the maximum percentage that can be deducted from an employee's pay to satisfy a student loan garnishment is 15% of disposable earnings. The portions of an employee's take-home pay are exempt from a federal tax levy are the taxpayer's standard deduction and the taxpayer's personal exemptions. The payroll deductions from employee wages for their portion of 401k plans are recorded as a liability. Employees who do not have bank accounts and may be paid by the employer who uses some type of electronic funds transfer system, they would be using a pay card. How is the information that is usually on a paper pay stub given to an employee if they use electronic pay stubs through a secure website, kiosk, or interactive voice response system? The employer must do which of the following with unclaimed paychecks? The employer must file a report after a specific statutory period and surrender the money to the state as abandoned property. Which of the following accounts must be opened in the general ledger to record payroll tax entries? All of the above. Payroll taxes, FICA taxes payable, OASDI, FICA taxes payable, HI, FUTA taxes payable, SUTA taxes payable. Is it necessary for an employer subject to FICA and FUTA to keep a separate expense account for the taxes under each act? And they want to tell us that this is no. Is it necessary for an employer who is subject to FICA and FUTA taxes to keep a separate expense account for the taxes under each act? And the answer is no. And I believe the reason that the answer is no is that at the time you file your 941, you can calculate it at that time. And it certainly doesn't hurt if they're separate, if they are listed separately. It's just not required that it is. All right. Which of the following postings affect assets, liabilities, and owner's equity of a company? A debit to SUTA taxes payable, that affects liabilities. A debit to wage expense, that affects expenses, owner's equity. A credit to cash, that affects assets. A credit to FICA taxes payable, that affects liabilities. So everything, all of the above. It is necessary to classify employees by the kind of work performed when computing the cost of workers' compensation benefit fund because the premium rate for workers' compensation insurance varies with the hazards involved in the work performed. And that is true. Higher premiums for more hazardous work. When the employer records a deposit of FICA taxes and federal income taxes withheld, FICA taxes payable OASDI, FICA taxes payable HI, and employees, federal income tax payable are debited. So this is when we pay it and cash is credited. What happens when we pay these items? All right. The accrual entry for a portion of a weekly payroll accrued at the end of an accounting period is determined by, I believe it is this, let's see here. Oh, hold on just a second, prior week. Okay, it's this one. The amount of an adjustment can be based on the percentage of a prior week's pay. Benefits such as vacation pay and retirement pay are recorded in the period in which the employees earn them. And finally, the payroll-related expenses an employer may incur because of employees include pension benefits, vacation benefits, wages, salaries, payroll taxes, workers' compensation, insurance. So it's all of the above. All right. So if you have any questions, please email me, and thank you for your attention.